Hi, I'm Anna the Wolf, and welcome. Welcome to the 10th in a series of transformative tales. And this time, you have walked through a forest and are following a riverbank along when you hear behind you the baying of hounds, and you hear huffing and puffing and thumping and thudding and breaking of twigs and all manner of the noises of a pursuit. And you stand back and you watch as an enormous bear comes flying down the shore with pebbles and gravel just flying behind him, and just looking over his shoulder, and all you can hear are hounds chasing him, just woo. And he looks at you and he says, "Don't tell him where I went. Don't tell him. Don't tell him." And he dives into the river in an attempt to lose them. And the water is cold, and you can see him shivering as he crosses the river. And up a precipice, he starts scrambling, using his claws. And the dogs, no sooner than he gets halfway up the precipice, the dogs go right after him. And he gets maybe 4 or 5 good arm lengths up the precipice when the hounds are right on his heels, and they grab him by his back legs and start pulling, and their teeth tear into his legs, and they pull him back towards him. He says, "No!" in the largest growl he can muster, and takes a swipe at them, and they're and they fall back. But being hounds in pursuit, they keep trying to grab him, and he finally gets his claws into the rock and climbs up onto the very top of a plateau, and you see him disappear. It's too steep for any of the dogs to follow him, but you follow a little goat trail yourself and go all the way up to just check on him and see how he's doing up there. And when you get up there, you see him winded, just going, oh my God, I'm just spent. Jeez. And he looks around, and he's clearly very, very thirsty from having run for so long. And he's licking his back legs that are just riddled with puncture marks from the hound's teeth. And he finds a small stream trickling along, and he thinks, "I'll just have a sip." And he starts lapping at the water, and then he pulls back. He goes, "Oh, it's a little salty." But he's so thirsty, he just dips right back in and has another long, this time much longer, drink of water that's just a little bit salty. But he can handle it because he's been through a lot worse today. And just then, up the same precipice, you hear all manner of shouting and yelling and, "Get back here! Come back here, you boar! Get back down here!" And just then you see arrows whizzing over the top of the precipice, and up scrambles a boar, its tusks out. And it staggers back and forth and takes a few steps, and you notice right between her shoulder blades, there's an arrow that's gone straight into her shoulders. And she looks around, bewildered and stumbling in the blinding light at the top of the plateau where no one could push through her. And Bear says, "Hey, Boar, looks like we've had the same kind of day. Why don't you come over and have a sip out of this stream? It's really cool, and it's not the most refreshing, but you know what? It'll hit the spot." And so Boar staggers over and is like, can't quite get the arrow out, but has a big long drink out of the stream too. She's like, "Bear, this is a little bit salty." Bear's like, "Yeah, it's salty, but it's here, and it seems like it's quenching my thirst." But he seems to be drinking more of it because he's a little bit thirstier than usual. Boar's like, "Oh, thank you, Bear. Let's just kick back here on the shore and wait until you hear an awful noise. You hear clattering of rocks and you hear gunfire. Like, oh my word, what is going on? And up over the edge of the plateau, as though he had wings, shot a stag. He was magnificent. He was maybe the largest stag you'd ever seen. He had antlers that were maybe 8 to 10 points worth of antlers. And he came zipping over the edge and just came skidding to a stop right next to Boar. And Boar looked at him, and it was easy to see why he was running. That beautiful rack of antlers he had was sure to be a trophy for any hunter in pursuit. And the sides of the old stag were riddled with so many scars from whizzing bullets over the years that he looked like he had maps on both sides of his hide. And somehow he'd managed to escape every time. But he looked around nervously and he's like, do you hear some more? Do you hear them? Are they coming? I think I hear footsteps. Do you? And Bear said, hey, friend, relax. It's okay. They can't make it up the plateau. The hounds are down there. The bow hunters are down there. We're way up here. It's okay. Have a drink of water. Cool yourself off. He's like, oh God, thanks. I'm really thirsty. It's been a heck of a day. Heck of a day. He takes a big, long sip. And the beautiful, beautiful stag takes the longest sip of all. Goes, oh, that's odd. Tastes a little salty. And Boar said, yeah, it is a little salty, but you get used to it after a while. It's really refreshing. And so the three of them up there compare stories about how they'd been pursued for their fur and for their tusks and for their antlers. It seems like their whole life they'd been running from something. And how lucky they were to have found themselves together in this great place on top of the plateau. And so the days pass and they find themselves still sitting next to the creek, sipping water, telling each other how lucky they are to have each other up here. And then Rabbit walks up and said, hey guys, have you seen yourselves recently? And Boar said, no, not really. I've been perfectly content here by the shore. I mean, I gotta say, I'm a little nervous usually because it's this constant reminder, this arrow on my back is, always with me and reminds me of how scary things can get. But I haven't seen myself recently. No. And then Rabbit turns and says, Stag, have you taken a look at yourself recently? The stag said, no, I haven't. I've just been pretty happy here. He said, okay, that makes sense. And how about you, Bear? Any chances you've caught a glimpse of yourself in the creek? Bear's like, no, I haven't. I've just been feeling kind of slow and low recently. I'm just, licking my wounds, those puncture marks the hounds left. I've just been taking my time working on them. And it's, seems like they're not really closing up, but, thank God there's water here, right? Rabbit said, yeah, about the water. This water is not good water to be drinking. It's, some people say it's poisoned. Boar said, what? What do you mean it's poisoned? I feel fine. I feel pretty good. He's like, okay, hold on. Go over to the edge of the water and take a look at yourself. And Boar looked in the creek and she noticed that she was an entirely different looking animal than the one that had clambered up the side of the cliff. She suddenly was a pale color. Her beautiful bristles had kind of grown limp and soft. They weren't stiff and beautiful and shiny anymore. And her body was kind of bloated and it didn't look right. And Stag took a look, and although he recognized himself, he goes, I could see myself in there. But what is going on with my ribs? It's like they've kind of like puffed out and extended. I don't understand what's happening to me. And Bear said, well, shoot. If you guys look different, what do I look like? And he went over to the edge, and it looked worse than his longest hibernation. His fur was chunky. He looked all disproportionate in all different areas of his body. And the rabbit said, hey, you know what? The problem is that you've been drinking this way too long. This is salt water, and you're freshwater animals. So you're going to have to step away. And they said, I'm too thirsty. I'm sorry. I can't possibly go down the trail. There's things out there that are way scarier than this water. And just going to hang out here. Don't mind me. Move along, Rabbit. Move along. And Rabbit was like, come on, guys. Seriously, there's more water further on. I'm like, no. It's just going to be Bear, Boar, and Stag from here on out. The amigos, we're here, sidled up to this beautiful creek. And no matter how many times the rabbit said, guys, seriously, this water is being poisoned further up the creek. You really, really need to understand that Wolverine is up there dumping salt in the water. They said, we're not moving. Not gonna move. And he was just a rabbit. What could he do? I mean, these guys were massive. They were trophy animals. That's why they were being hunted. There was really absolutely nothing that a little rabbit could do on his own. And so he walked off, shaking his head, and wished his friends could understand what was happening to them. And he went back down into the forest, and he grabbed Squirrel. Squirrel had a way with words that Rabbit just didn't, and he drug Squirrel back up the cliff with him. And the Squirrel said, hey guys, I know that Rabbit's told you about this water, and I know how scary it is down there, but we're not going to take you back down there. You just have to trust me on this, that what you need to deal with that thirst is a group of us to come up here and tell you the truth. And so Squirrel started. He said, okay, Boar, I have to tell you that you're the most cunning of all creatures. You're agile and strong and smart. You're amazing. And suddenly Boar didn't feel quite as thirsty. Part of her was filled up in a way she'd never been filled before. And then he turned to Bear and said, hey, Bear, I know you're feeling thirsty at this moment, but I need you to hear this. Those claws of yours are amazing. You can reach places that the rest of us can't. You find honey in logs that are so thick and big that none of us could ever get to it. You are one of the thickest furred animals. You can stand elements that would turn other animals to dust. You're amazing, Bear. And he turned to Stag and said, hey, Stag, you're agile and quick, and you can travel clear up to the heavens with those hooves of yours, and then bring back truth to us. Stag, we need you. You're amazing. And the three animals were like, you know what, Squirrel? I'm feeling a lot better. What did you say to us? And Squirrel said, you know what? All I said was, I love you. And I hope that this story finds you in a really wonderful, safe plateau, and that you're not feeling nervous or sad or riddled with holes or arrows today. But it seems like it happens. And it's always best to keep a friend like Squirrel around who can remind you exactly of who it is that you are. And I am so glad you came to join me today for this tale. And if you liked it, I hope you'll give it a like. And if you know somebody else who could use to hear about the tale of the boar, the bear, and the stag, that you will share it with them. And I hope you'll subscribe, because I really, really love telling these stories to all of you, and I hope you'll join me for the next one. Thanks so much. Goodbye.